This is going to be one of those days where there's a lot of opportunities, and it's tempting to be out there already working. So, at any rate, bear with. We're gonna talk about that in a moment. Let me see if I can. There we go. Looking at essentially the warmest day of the year for many parts of the state. It won't be for the north, but it definitely will be for the southern part of the state here today, with 80 degrees for the first time of the 2025 season in many locations. For the past week, though, starting there and again looking at the mean temperature departures on the left-hand side, the pattern that we've had for much of the spring thus far, an interesting one in the Great Lakes region in the upper Midwest, colder than normal north and warmer than normal in the south. And we've seen that repeated several times, and the departures here from last week really illustrate that pretty well. You can see the greens up in upper Michigan, 1, 2, 3 degrees Fahrenheit below normal up there. But as you move south and certainly towards the central and eastern corn belt, and including much of southern lower Michigan here, we had positive departures once again. And it has to do with the storm track that's been through the Midwest and the fact that the warm air with many of those low pressure systems that's associated with it has only made it partway into Michigan. It never made it to mostly never made it to the north. And as a result, we've had distinctly different transition here this year. Precipitation wise, it's also interesting. There's strong north to south gradients here as well on the right hand side, but the heaviest precipitation by far fell across the north, a solid 2 to 3 inches. Some of that was frozen still in the form of snowfall, but some cases almost 3 inches. So a very wet week across portions of western and central upper Michigan, and then decreasing as you go south. And note here, south of essentially south of I-69 and 96 in the southeast, in many cases less than a quarter of an inch. So we've already had some opportunities develop here just because of, well, some of it's the luck of the draw with these systems as they come through, and it's hard to project and forecast sometimes with the accuracy, but this one certainly in the south where you're looking for an opportunity and some drying and so forth, we got that, and that follows, of course, several wetter than normal weeks. Our degree day accumulations here, and this is a seasonal accumulation, and I show this because of our basically our fall planted or our perennial crops. We'll worry about corn here in a couple of weeks as that hopefully gets in the ground here as we speak. But the here we're looking primarily at development of our wheat crop and our forages that are coming out of dormancy. And the pattern you see here on the left-hand side here, the observed accumulations, now pushing 160 base 50 units, the seasonal totals, but we still have some single digit totals up in the north. So very, very strong difference from north to south. That's really unusual. For typically we see the surplus or deficits statewide that are consistent, but this year we've had much more accumulation and warmth in the south and vice versa in the north. And on the right hand side here versus normal with the color codes, you can see that the reds are surpluses of seasonal accumulation. Some cases, and if you convert this into calendar days, at least a week. Some cases more than that, a week and a half advanced or ahead of normal in the southern half of lower Michigan, and then the blues in the north, where we still have deficits. So again, an unusual pattern for Michigan. We looked at that for the climatologically. Several people have asked us, wondering when was the last time this happened. Well, what we found when we looked at the climate data was it's not very often that we see that type of a pattern across the state. And if we go back all the way to the late 1800s, there have been 16 seasons in Michigan where we've had colder than normal conditions in the north and warmer than normal conditions in the south. 10 of those occurred in the month of March. Six occurred in April. The interesting thing is, though, that and it shows you something about the variability that we see typically in the spring season. We never saw back-to-back March and April's in Michigan over the last 30 odd years where the pattern repeated. It was in one month or the other. And of course, this year we've actually had a little bit of this in both, and certainly in the month of March, but and also definitely in the month of April. And if we look at least closest years, there's nothing really quite like 2025 with this pattern, but 2022 is probably the closest one that we can find. So if you think back about that and the start we got in 2022, that would probably be the closest. A little bit of similarity also in 2023, but again, I think the bottom line is here that the this unusual spatial pattern or regional pattern we have this year is not very common. Well, let's look at some of the really important things here for today, timely things. These are hourly temperatures from our EnviroWeather site here on campus, and I show this as representative, but it's really, well, it's encouraging to see this. The air temperature is in the dark red color here. The brown, those are, we also had dew point temperatures in here as well. But the green, which is what I really wanted to show, those are soil temperatures at 2 inches under bare cover. And what you can see during the last week, the warming and dry, we had the warmest conditions last weekend is on Good Friday. On Friday, where we got up to 70 degrees. Again, today we're likely to see near 80. But look at the soil temperatures here, at least here in the local area, generally ranging from the mid and upper 40s at night to the mid 50s during the day. And that's pretty typical of what we see across many southern parts of the state. It's about 5 degrees cooler than that as you move into northern lower, and then 5 to 10 degrees cooler than that, or 5 to 10 degrees cooler than this up in upper Michigan, where it just hasn't been as warm. But the everything is hopefully where you are. There will be opportunities, especially today, because with one exception, we're looking at just a fantastic day here. Hopefully, a long day with a lot of work done. On our weather map this morning here, we have a weak cool front. That's the blue line there, trying to move through. It's not making much headway here across the state, but there are a few showers and a couple rumbles of thunder embedded in that across some portions of central and northern, well, let's call it west central, lower Michigan here. Not very heavy rain, some sprinkles, but most of the rest of the state, we've got partly cloudy skies and well, decent conditions. That precipitation that you see there in the it not gonna amount to much, but it is progressing to the east. That could be an issue for central parts of the state, but everybody else is looking at pretty much a dry and sunny day. And in the southern area of the state, again, ahead of that cold front, we're going to see temperatures way up into the 70s and low 80s here, again, for the warmest day of the year. However, by tomorrow, the next weather system, which is off to our west, will approach and move through the state. Tomorrow, we're going to see rain. Well, actually, tonight, we'll start the first chance for precipitation in upper Michigan and then spreading to the east and south during the day tomorrow. Best chances for most people will be tomorrow afternoon and evening with the system. And it looks right now fairly widespread rainfall, not overly heavy, but thinking a quarter to half an inch of precip most areas, and the coverage will be fairly widespread with this, especially across central and southern parts of the state. So whatever work you get in planting you get done today, well, you'll get some water on that here tomorrow. And temperatures tomorrow a few degrees cooler than they will be today. Upper 50s to low 60s in the north, and probably some low 70s as we go to the south. But again, the big issue tomorrow there, and I would also note here, the map here shows dark green here with rain. Well, certainly we're looking at rain as the day goes on, but there may be a window. Don't keep an eye on the radar here. There may be some opportunities for more work tomorrow morning before the rain comes. And I would guess that's especially true in eastern parts of the state. I think that again the best chances for rain tomorrow with this system won't come until the PM and late afternoon and evening. It will be primarily showers with there'll be a few thunder showers and there will a few rumbles of thunder, nothing outrageous or severe, but it will be pretty widespread as I mentioned earlier. By Saturday, we can see high pressure moving in to the region. That's the big blue H there over the northeastern Minnesota. And that's going to bring in some Canadian air for the weekend. Cooler, northerly and easterly winds on Saturday and noticeably cooler. High temperatures only in the 50s on Saturday. That'll be the coolest day probably of the upcoming week. And then on the other news, though, it will be dry. Most of the precipitation that we see here tomorrow, the threat will be over overnight into early Saturday, and then dry conditions on both Saturday and Sunday. A little bit warmer on Sunday than Saturday, probably back up into the 60s in the south. The next chance for rainfall after tomorrow will be with well, the weather system you see here on Saturday out across the southern plains. That system moves in here by overnight Sunday into Monday across upper Michigan, and for the rest of the state, I think for most of the lower peninsula, the greatest threat for more rainfall, the next rainfall will be later on Monday or Tuesday, probably even Tuesday. So there will be a couple of days in there. It will also be noticeably warmer. We're in a very, very progressive type of jet stream pattern right now with going back and forth between cool Canadian air masses and warm subtropical air masses from the south, and right in the middle of that is the upper Midwest and Michigan. So we will see fairly big swings in temperature and conditions on a day-to-day basis, which is what we had envisioned here over the last week or two as we looked ahead into the medium range. For precipitation and water here for the upcoming week, these are the estimated totals through next Thursday, and you can see they range from about a half an inch across much of central Michigan here. That's in that dark green to a half to 1 inch in other parts, the southeast, but especially across the north. Again, it looks like the northern part of the state will see the greatest coverage and totals here as we do move through the next week. And timing wise, most of this will be tomorrow with the weather system tomorrow, and then the next weather system here early next week. So the two major systems that are reflected here in these totals. So what about the medium range? Well, I mentioned progressive jet stream pattern, and that's so we're seeing again constant movement and basically changes in the upper air. So it means a changing surface weather pattern. Here for the last couple days of April into the beginning of May, you can see a ridge out over western North America, a trough over the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes. The key here is they're moving. They're not sticking in one place for very long. They're progressive. They're dynamically moving, and so for at least the last few days of April and maybe the beginning of May, still suggesting this pattern, warmer than normal conditions with well, not near, maybe a little bit above normal. That's where we've been in our weather pattern here recently. But when we move to the 8 to 14 day time frame, note now that there has been some eastward progression of these features. And that's really important because it does mean that there will be changes probably here again for the beginning of May. And you can see from the temperature and precipitation maps here on the right-hand side, it puts us in maybe a little bit cooler conditions, certainly near normal temperatures here, but not above normal. That's off to our west. And notice also normal to below normal precipitation. So at least for the beginning of May, this guidance does suggest maybe a little cooler and drier as we do move into May. But I think the again overall message here is it's a very progressive, very spring-like pattern where we're seeing changes occurring all the time. That's not a bad thing, but it will mean that we've got to be uh, watching and observant here for those opportunities when they do come up and to get out there. There will be opportunities. It's just the timing is going to be tough to know very far ahead of time because of the changes that are taking place. Finally, there are some new long lead outlooks here for the U.S. And for the Midwest as well that just came out or issued last week from the Climate Prediction Center. They've adjusted a little bit, but for the month of May, which is on the top here, mean temperatures on the upper left, precipitation in May on the right, you can see we've basically gone to a no direction. So no direction towards above or below normal, really for either temperatures or precip. You could make the case here in southeastern lower a little bit, maybe a little bit of above normal, but that's actually probably the last piece that we will see of the La Nina event, which has recently come to an end out of the Pacific. That's again that spring wet wet area across the Ohio Valley. That's a typical signal with that. That may be the last time we see that because we are moving now towards a neutral situation there. So this is pretty much it for La Nina. Further on ahead for the 3 month May, June, July period, you can see they do move us back into more warmer than normal. A forecast. That is also true for the latter half of the growing season as well. No direction on precip for the early part, but I would note, and we'll look at this here a little bit later, but the long lead outlooks do, for what it's worth right now, they do suggest possibly drier than normal for the latter part of the upcoming growing season in the Great Lakes region, including Michigan. So, but warmer than normal is probably the take home message with no forecast direction on precip early, but maybe drier than normal late. That's the summary. And so again, we're in a very active pattern right now, and it's expected for the next couple of weeks. But boy, today it doesn't get much better than this for conditions. Hopefully, you can take advantage of things here today. And again, watch those updated forecasts because there will be opportunities. We're just going to have to pick and choose because there will be a number of weather systems coming through the region on almost on a day-to-day or every other day type of basis. And I'll wrap up weather